Okay, bait profiles. I only got 10 minutes here. Let's go to the jigs. Let's keep on the jigs here. Let's go through the different jigs. These are most common. Lindy Fuzzy Grub. This guy right here. Okay, why would I use this over a curltail grub? If I'm going to put a chunk of crawler on there, if I'm going to take a leech and tip it with a leech, live or one of these, I throw it on here like this, this marabou goes down there and breathes. And now I'm working the presentation with the leech or even one of those minnows on there. If you take one of these, a curltail grub, like so, and you put this guy on there, like so, okay, see how that tail is? And now you throw the leech on there, or a chunk of worm, what's happening? It's coming up to the tail and hitting the tail. When you're baiting things up, you want to use these marabou tail baits like this. Those are for baiting up, right there. Those are for baiting. They've got cat-like reflexes. That was amazing, wasn't it? Okay, so when you're baiting up, fuzzy grubs, great all-time walleye jig, right there. Now you've got stand-up jigs, right here. What is this crazy thing? Stand-up jigs work well when you're really having to finesse the fish. We'll get this thing up on there. What you can do is you can basically dead stick this thing. This is a little bit too thin of plastic, but you can dead stick this thing. What I mean by that, if you were jigging the blade bait and it wasn't working, blade bait's a pretty aggressive approach, correct? You went to maybe the curltail grub and you were working that vertically, or you're casting it out and dragging it back. You got the tail twisting. Maybe it's just a little too much. What you can do with this guy, toss it down and let it sit there, like so. What's going to happen is this thing's going to float up, like so. And you can drag it along a little bit and just stop it and let it sit there. What happens is they'll come up to it and look at it, and as they're breathing in and out on it, because they get right on it, it's sitting right up in their face, and this thing, as they breathe, it's going, it's moving slow, it's easy to catch, it's pointed up at them right in their face, and they can go suck it in. Make that progression. Blade bait was too fast. I went to the grub, didn't get nothing. I'm on fish, I know they're here. I went to the stand-up jig. Sat it down there and I just didn't even move it. I just dead sticked it. Let it sit. You may have, 20, 30 seconds, a minute go by before you move it. And it just drives them nuts sitting in their face. But it just stands it up instead of laying it down in the mud. Now you've got whistler jigs, which is right here. Whistler jig. Oh boy, that was almost bad. Hooks and carpet don't mix. There's a whistler jig. This is real popular down in the lower section of the Columbia. What this thing does, hook eyes straight up, you pull it up and you're moving along real slow when you're doing this. You're covering territory. And a lot of times, guys, when I'm jigging, I'm always on the electric motor. I got some of my buddies, diehard walleye guys, if that line is not straight down, they just lose their mind. I got to be straight over them. Well, if I don't see them on my graph, there ain't no sense in me being straight over the bottom. I need to get on the gas and move slow and try to find some fish. Because you may throw your buoy out and you hit them and you were in 40 to 60 feet of water and you were doing great. And then what happens? Seth said, well, it was a little chop. The wind's blowing out of the south. It got warm. They're moving. You got to stay on top of them. So then I'll just put the electric motor on slow and start jigging. And what you do with this guy is you pop it up. It's just a constant up and down, up and down. You can tip it with a plastic grub. Most common thing is to tie on with a Snell type knot, a leader, and a small hook, and then you got your trailer back there and you put your worm on it. Then you bounce it, Bounce it. What's unique about this guy, remember the smile blade? Spins, but it doesn't have a ton of vibration. Same thing. When you crank this thing up, it spins. And then when you drop it, it spins. Spin, spin. Just one more thing. It's a little different vibration. Not as aggressive as this. A little more subtle.
What weight are you using in those?
Weight, you're going to use about an 1/8 ounce per every 10 to 15 feet. So 20 feet, you're going to be around 1/4 ounce. The biggest thing is to use the lightest weight jig head possible. Don't go with some 1 ounce jig in 10 feet of water, because you want to hop it up and you want it to fall slow. I mean, guys that are good, you can jig with a 1 ounce if you want, because a guy that's a good jigger is going to be able to lift it up and he's going to push it back down the speed he wants it. Walleyes will always hit it when it's dropping when you're jigging. Always when it's dropping. Boom, they suck it in. And you have to be able to feel it when they do that. You'll feel a little tap. You'll feel like there's a little bit of weed on there, or it just simply won't fall. You start to go down, and you're like, I'm not to the bottom yet. And you start to drop, and it just goes slack. You better be going up. Is there on there?
Well, that's technique then, huh?
What's that?
It's really a technique.
It's technique. It really is. Remember I told you that buddy of mine went down with that big, ugly stick type rod? He couldn't feel them? Well, we was jigging. And he just could not feel his bites. That's why you got to have the right rod, like we talked about in the first one. Fast action. Something that you're going to feel it. Feel everything with it. Same rod, that's what I jig with. Yeah, they make jigging rods, but that's what I use.
Hey, Seth,
Yeah.
you got a fade underneath you.
I do, look at that. Boy, I didn't want to have any more kids. Good thing I didn't go running through here like a schoolgirl and hook that thing on a wall or something, huh? That'd have been all bad. Jeez Louise. Okay. Let's take real quick, guys. I'm going to run you through bait profiles for cranks. That's about all we've got time for here. This guy right here, obviously this is a big one. I brought the wrong box. Floating Rapala. Floating Rapala. When the water temperature gets around 39 to 40 degrees, you can put one of these on a dropper, troll real slow, and catch fish on it as an option to cover water. But you're going to be using the smaller size. Smaller size.
Number 7.
What's that? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Troll again?
Yep. Real slow on a dropper. I like to do it off of a dropper. Usually run up 2-3 feet because this thing's going to dive a little bit with the bill. What you do?
You can't run orange, green.
No, the best color with these guys, typically what you'll see is you'll see the chrome, the black back, perch color. You can run the fire tiger. It all depends on the conditions that you're given. I've seen the golden orange work great. It just depends on water clarity, low light, high light, whatever you got for visibility. What you'll do is you'll pull this thing along real slow, guys. Pull it along real slow, and then you'll stop, and it'll slowly float up. And a lot of times that floating up, they'll strike it when it's coming up. Now, when you look at profiles, I'm going to get this really quick here. Remember how we talked about things being easy to eat? My favorite trolling guy is this right here. Tail dancer deep. This guy will catch smallmouth, it'll catch the walleyes. It's a great bait. Rapala tail dancer deep. Comes in a couple different sizes. Yeah, Tom?
If you're not going to use a swivel, did you use a Rapala knot?
Yep. Tie the Rapala knot on there, definitely. 10-pound test. That's what I like to troll with. 10 pound gives you optimal strength and best diving depth.
Yeah, what's that called again right there?
No. This you just run behind the planer board or long line out the back of the boat. Okay.
Name that again.
This is a tail dancer deep, Rapala tail dancer deep. They come in different sizes too, guys. It's just this happens to be a deep. What you have to keep in mind, see here and see here? One's easier to eat than the other. In the prime periods, you can throw these up on the bank, just like we talked about, bounce them down through there and get fish on them. But it's typically when they're smoking, just because of the profile. This guy here, if things get a little tough, it's a little easier to eat, right? Different profile, it's thinner, easier to swallow. When you're trolling, remember how we talked about in the pre-spawn and in the post-spawn? they're feeding on the flats, they're going to be at 10 feet of water or less. If you go ripping through there with the electric motor or even the kicker motor, you're going to scare them off. Got to use the boards. Contour trolling the shoreline is awesome. You run this guy out. Typically what you're going to do, if you know you got a steep drop and you're trying to hit a contour that's 15, 20 feet, you can run a deep dive and plug down. Typically what I like to do is run the shad body. Shad body is the all around, if you talk to anybody that trolls, probably their all around favorite bait to troll is the shad body. Reason being is it's got a little bit of depth to it, which makes it look like a lot of reward, but yet it's still easy to eat. See that right there? Thinner, this one's a little deeper. But what you'll do, if I know that I want to troll deep contour, maybe say that Walleye Jim, Mickey, and I are out, and we're trying to fish the shallow flat. I'll run my first board out, the shallow running bait like this. Be it this, maybe it's just a jerk bait, suspending jerk bait. But one that's not going to dive far. I'll try to keep this thing right against the shoreline. It's only going to go down 2 or 3 feet. The next one coming in is Walleye Jim. This bait's going to go down 8 to 10 feet. So I got a board just a little closer to the boat. Now Mickey's got to have something out there, or I got to have something out there, and I want to troll a contour. So the next bait's going to go 15 to 20 feet. Now I'm covering all 3 columns of water as we troll down through there. And it may be that if they're all biting up shallow, you can take those 2 or 3 boards, stack them right on top of each other, all pulling these at different distances behind to create the stagger. But a lot of guys go out and throw crankbaits, and they're throwing these. Man, it's just, a lot of times it's just too big of a profile. When they're peeking out, guys, when they're night walleye going, they're eating that. So obviously, obviously you're going to be able to catch them. Oh, that's bad. That's why I don't have carpet in my boat.
No, just leave it there.
Just leave it. But they're going to eat this, right, guys? If they're eating this, they're going to eat this. My dad and I have gone out night walleye fishing. I'm throwing this. I'm getting them. He's throwing a big old fat body. He's getting them. Chad and I went out, we threw this, and we got them. So they're just chowing. They don't really care. But if they're biting cranks and you get off on a bite, and the morning time they were hitting this because they were active and it quit, change it up. Change your profiles, just like those frogs, just like those blades on that spinner. You got to make your progressions. Keep the profiles in mind. Okay. We'll run a few quick questions, guys, and then we're out of here.
How far are you running behind your
Behind the board? When I go behind the board with one of these guys, maybe 40 feet, because the board's running out. That board running over the top of their head, not going to bother them any. If I'm running directly behind the boat, trolling out in open water, where I know this guy's going to go down, 20, 21 feet, whatever, I'll run it straight out the back, and I'll go back, 100, 150 feet just to give it room to dive. Because that boat's not going to be bothering that fish. All the time when you longline troll, guys, a little trick. When you go out trolling, I love these stories. I went out to Lake Coeur d'Alene, and I had to troll at 1.2 miles an hour. Seth, how fast were you trolling when you did the planer board show? I don't know. I'm trying to drive. I'm trying to drink coffee. I'm trying to eat. Mickey and I are telling jokes. I'm laughing. Guys, I have never seen a fish swim at 1.2 miles an hour for 15 hours. Doesn't happen. Okay? When you're trolling, vary your speeds. Planer boards surge. They go through the chop. They create motion. If you're holding the rod in your hand, pump it. Pump it fast. Sweep it slow. Pause it back. I was doing S-turns. That was the whole key. I was doing 5 miles an hour doing S-turns. Yeah, you were getting fish because when you turn, the inside stalls. And then you come across and you go again. And a lot of times, real quick, we're going to get to this on the trout thing later. It's the same thing when you're long lining. For walleyes, you hear the S pattern thing, guys. This is why I like planer boards. And I like the Sidewinder, which is available at axtackle.com. But here's what happens. Here's our boat, right? Right behind my boat, when I'm trolling on the surface, that's a dead zone of water. Well, I was doing S-turns. Well, as you do S-turns in your boat, what did you do right here?
Speed up.
Well, speed up and slow down, so you're changing speed. But you also created an area here where you didn't disturb it.
Slack water.
Yeah, as you come back across, your lines pull through that. With planer boards, they're out there jumping, you're running the throttle like an idiot. You're out there where the fish are. You got to use the right tool for the job. If you're going to troll shallow for walleyes, trout, any of them, get the board out there along the shoreline. In the summertime when they're down deeper, 20 feet, it's not going to bother them, run it straight out the back if you want. But vary your speed, work the rod. Watch an in fisherman show where they troll and they go, you got to do it. Nothing swims at 1.2 miles an hour its whole life.
So when you're using the bait, of course, you're locating, trying to locate the fish. As soon as you locate it, then you go switch up to your jigging setup.
Yep, switch up to jigging unless I'm fishing suspended fish. If I'm fishing suspended fish, which we didn't get a chance to get to, would be a slip bobber rig. You know, if we were trolling and we were hitting a lot of fish at a certain depth, and we hit one and we were down 15 feet, maybe off of a shelf, I may anchor up on top of that shelf, throw my bobber rig out, set it up to be 15 feet, and let it drift with the waves down through there with a leech on there. A couple split shot, a leech, a worm, and real subtle fish. When Jim and I were up there fishing up at Kettle, and we didn't get anything, this is where I probably went wrong. I should have anchored up off of one of those areas. We were marking fish. We marked all kinds of fish, guys. Piles of them. What I should have done is probably anchored up, put this guy, set it to the depth where it's just up off the bottom where I'm seeing the fish, cast up just like steelhead. Let that leech or worm go down through there, real subtle. That's probably what should have happened. What's that? Or no, just bobber
I
fishing.
know, I'm just saying, you haven't really covered drop shotting.
What's that?
You haven't really covered much of drop
No,
shot.
we got a whole DVD on that. We got 2 hours of just that. Yeah, 2 hours of that. There's a lot into that that's involved with that guy. But yeah, you could use the drop shot. We tried drop shotting up there. We got one good hit, and that was it.
One rainbow.
Yep, one rainbow. Yep. So it would have been better for us to do the slip float rig.
You know,
So
Seth,
when we go ahead.
I found out drinking a cup of coffee with planer boards, you can hit somebody else's boat a long ways away.
Yeah, you can, definitely. First time we did it, I don't know if you guys ever saw the steelhead show we did down in Lewiston. We were trolling this thing along, and it's not normal to troll planer boards for steelhead, you know. And this guy goes by, and we're looking, Mickey and I, and I think it was Mike. And we're trolling along, and this guy comes by, and he's got the top and stuff up. And he comes out and goes, "Hey, your lure's on top of the water back there." I go, "Hey, thanks." Well, it's the board out there, you know. What I wanted to know was how my lure got 100 yards that way and was on the surface. I was kind of weird. But he was letting me know, and I told him thanks and didn't do a thing about it, and he probably thought I was an idiot.
And that guy really jumped on the 80s boat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'll do it. You got to pay attention down there in the confluence when it gets busy. We'll, on the rainbow show, or the rainbow thing coming up, I'll show you how to tie it up in some of the baits, okay?
On the drop shot.
Yeah.
But, so, what we covered here basically tonight was a lot of the jigs and that, but at what point do you usually maybe go with a drop shot?
The drop shot for us, you know, it's not in the wintertime, we don't do that well with it. We don't. We're more blades and jigs. In that pre-spawn period, like that show you saw, the drop shot starts to work. And it'll work all the way through summer until you get to that period like when Jim and I were, it just wouldn't work. You know, and that was where we should have went to that finesse presentation of the slip float. You know, but the drop shot even in the fall will work, casting it up on flats. But in the cold water, it just does not work. As well, I mean, we just can't seem to produce with it as well. You know, that jig's down there low, bouncing up and down more aggressively is what seems to get the job done. Okay, any other questions, guys?
The Gulp Alive minnow is better, or the Gulp in the package?
The alive minnow's better. The only reason why, when these guys came to us, these are prototypes before they were out. And I pulled it out, and I never promoted the Gulp. Never on a show promoted the Gulp. Because it was a lot more rigid. You know, we always used the Berkeley Pearl Olive Shad, sparkle drop shot bass minnows. Piles of them. Still do use them. Still my favorite drop shot. The problem with the Gulp was it was real rigid. It didn't have much flex to it. Only the tail would move. Where that other standard Berkeley stuff, power bait, was a lot more subtle. But this stuff, when it came out, I mean, as soon as I pulled it out of there, I could tell. I mean, it's just so much softer. And they said, well, we didn't change anything, the sales rep. And I said, well, maybe you don't think they did, but they had to do something. And the other benefit of it is, once you use this, if you take it off the hook, you can throw it back in and recharge it in here. The stuff with the bags, if you did that, the bacteria from your hands in the water, as you use those baits, they break down. They start to deteriorate. That's what puts the scent in the water. If you took one that you've used and threw it back in your package, and you let it sit, it may rot the whole package. Where these ones here, you can throw them right back in. The other advantage of them is those other packages, if they leak and the fluid comes out, they dry up and get hard. These don't do that.
What color do we use?
They got the black olive. Is it black olive, Randy?
No.
No, on the leech. You're talking leech, right? Oh, and the smelt. It's they've got the smelt, chartreuse shad, which is good. You know, just like matching up the condition. Emerald shiner, an emerald shiner. That's what that one is. That's a good color. That one closely resembles that pearl olive shad. Okay.
Is there ever any kind of expiration on these scents or anything? Can it go bad?
I think that the spray bottles and stuff can, after a while.
But like
The gulp stuff is not.
okay,
No.
not even in the package.
No, The only thing that causes those to go bad is if they get left open. The air gets to them and they get hard.
Okay.
Yep. The actual spray scents, and like when we do the salmon steelhead stuff, I always buy new scents for that season. Because that stuff sits around and it gets melted like the smelly jellies and stuff, and I think it starts to break down and lose its power. So I always have fresh stuff when we go out every year. Okay.
Are we gonna be doing salmon and steelhead next week?
We're going to be doing trout and steelhead.
All right.
Yeah, trout and steelhead. Slime rockets, man. Yep.